right, we are back, and we are back and live. We have a very special guest today. But before we jump into this conversation, I think it's important, when we talk about policy and culture, why it's important to have this platform, and even though why we created this. We just had an incredible weekend just now. Do you want to talk a little bit about the weekend we just had? Briefly.
Open the night at the Mac. Shout out to Dave East coming out, showing Long Island, showing the North Amityville community some love. 3,000 plus people in the building, so it was major, man. I was excited. Everybody was excited. We had a parade, so it was major, man. Shout out to everybody that came out to that to support.
Opening night at the Mac. Unfortunately, Long Island took the loss.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dykeman.
Shout out to Ken Stevens, Squirrely, everybody that came out from Dykeman too, man. Shout out to y'all. I appreciate the support. They actually bringing a team out now too, so shout out to them, man. I really appreciate y'all bridging that gap. That was major for us.
Absolutely. And policy or culture, again, is we like to enjoy the activities, the entertainment that we love, especially with basketball and entertainment. But more important is if we have 1,000 people on opening weekend, that means we need 1,000 people in November or any primary, because in order to shift political will, we need that same energy that we have in doing the things we love, like opening night at the Mac or anything else, when it comes to making sure that not only local, but state and federal politics is reflecting the needs and the urgencies of the local community. So today, we are very grateful to have a special guest, an individual that has a huge experience and past between local and state politics, as well as the public and private industry, and also someone that's going to give us a real good education, I would say, about this specific role at the state level. And I'm very personally interested in this. So without further ado, we would like to formally introduce and welcome our 68th New York State Secretary of State, Walter T. Mosley, to the Policy and Culture platform. Secretary, welcome to Long Island.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to this conversation. Did some good research before this to just try to get you know you a little better. But Can you kind of just give us a brief understanding of what exactly the role of the Secretary of State for New York is?
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me. The Secretary of State, unlike a Secretary of State in other states, is an appointed position. I am appointed by the governor, so I don't run for it. In many states, people run for this position.
Yeah.
So they're a lot more autonomous. But I belong to, obviously, I make up a part of the cabinet team at the executive level. There are a multitude of agencies that are under me. There are a multitude of committees that are under me that I chair. So, for instance, I have a staff of over 700 people statewide.
Wow.
An operating and revenue budget of over $1 billion. We do everything from housing, economic development, revitalization, to licensing of professions. Over 40 professions are licensed through our office, to incorporation, which is what we're commonly known for in terms of incorporating businesses that want to start up in New York. But then we also do everything from heading up the African American Historical Commission that the governor put into place a couple of years ago, or heading up the Asian American Pacific Islander Committee. And those committees are just not committees that are just to hear people out, but to actually hear issues and concerns of residents from those communities, put them into a report, and then actually make them into public policy, so that we don't commit the sins of our fathers and our mothers of the past, and understanding rectifying wrongs where there are disparities that we are fully aware of. And then obviously there are things like the Athletic Commission. So anything that's combat sport related, we oversee that through the New York State Athletic Commission, which is under the purview of the Department of State. And I can go on and on. There are so many things that we do. They often call us the kitchen sink of state government, but at the same time, we take every role that is given to us, every mandate that is put under our purview with a great level of seriousness. We have the Office of Faith and Nonprofits, which was, again, created by the governor to be more of an outreach tool to our faith-based as well as our nonprofit organizations, providing them with grants to expand on the resources that they avail themselves to for their constituents throughout the state of New York. And like I said, we go all over. And it's just an honor to be here and to really talk to your listeners about, what this quote unquote department does. It sounds, important, and it is, but it's just another part of government that people just need to be fully aware of.
And it's it's interesting hearing that. Me and Dan is like really big on community, and we did some research. I see that you really big on community outside of the work that you do. How did that really was your transition in the government community based, or was that something that you just wanted to do? Like,
I think it was community based, definitely. In fact, I did not want to be in government. To be honest, for a long time, I wanted to be a sports agent. I wanted to be
I can see that.
I wanted to be a sportscaster because I grew up, listening, looking at people like Bryant Gumbel, right? And then I wanted to be a sports agent, and I was kind of gearing to my career towards that. But I come from a family of HBCU graduates. My grandmother went to Elizabeth City State. It was back then known as Elizabeth Teachers College in North Carolina. My mother went to Morgan State, and obviously I went to Howard Law School. And there was always a sense of giving back and being a part of your community, no matter where you were raised or grew up in, whether it was in North Carolina, Virginia, my father's side, or New York City, or in the Barbados, where my grandfather on my mother's side was from. And my mom was a part of the desegregation of Baltimore when she was a student at Morgan State back in the 50s, late 50s and early 60s. My mother, and my Miyama, my great-grandmother on my mother's side, helped to get elected the first African-American become a judge in Brooklyn, a young lawyer who helped them with their closing of their house that my grandfather was able to purchase. And at that time, there weren't too many, black families purchasing homes in Crown Heights. And he worked on the docks. So it was a part of our DNA, It wasn't necessarily stressed on me to run, but I guess that also reflects as to how I also carry myself. It's that I'm not a person that say, I want to run for this, I want to run for that. I just let my work speak for itself, and if people see it in me, then it's easier because you have people behind you. Whereas if you say, well, I want to do this, and then the next thing I want to do that, then it's all about you.
And we just spoke about the park. That's how basically I learned about politics.
Right.
Starting the park, I had no idea about it. Assemblywoman Kimberly John Pierre came to the park year one, and from there I started understanding the significance of politics. We wouldn't even be able to get the permit in the park without a political connection. So I seen that you was planted kind of like in the grassroots. So it's crazy to see that you had like an organic connection to politics, straight from community.
I could never see myself having the audacity to say I should be this or I should be that, because one, it's not yours to have. It's for the community to allow for you to earn it.
From the people.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can earn it is by what they see in you, regardless of what you want to do in your life. Irregardless is not a word, people. Regardless of what you want to do or not do in your life. And like I said, I didn't want to be in, governing and politics, because as a kid, I used to do it every summer.
You were right.
Putting the leaflets, because my mother was
Really?
still
Okay,
engaged.
so it's okay. That's
So
right.
she's like, you gotta go to these 3 buildings, and these buildings are like 23 stories long and high, and I'm putting leaflets under doors during the hot summer, and I'm gonna be outside, with my boys playing ball or something or hanging out, and I'm out here putting leaflets or handing out stuff or delivering stuff to a political club, and so I was forced to do things, and I was happy to do them, because now I look back on it, we helped get elected the first African-American woman to the city council, and Mary Pinkett, right? A dear friend of my mother's and our families. We were able to get people like Congressman Ed Towns, a social worker by trade, to become a member of Congress and eventually become the first African-American to head up the oversight committee in the House of Representatives. People like Roger Green, who grew up with my mother in Crown Heights as kids, being able to elect him to the assembly, and where he was a champion for children and family services for many years. Or get people like Clarence Norman Jr., who eventually will become the county chairman of Brooklyn. So I was around these people.
Wow.
They were just regular people to me. But at the same time, I was like, I want to see if this is something that I want to do, as opposed to
Yeah.
people saying this is what you ought to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Crown Heights, and I would say maybe your journey and your childhood growing up, but Brooklyn specifically has a lot of power coming out of it right now, from the AG's office, from obviously Attorney General Tish James, and to the current minority leader Hakeem Jeffries, and which, when doing the research, found out that you actually preceded his seat. That's the 57th district.
Yeah, he preceded me. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And that was very interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that time? And because there was a primary at that time too, right? And to get into that.
for his seat or
Yeah,
for my,
his seat.
yes.
Your first election cycle. Yeah.
It was a contested seat, and Hakeem and I go way back. Where, my mother took it upon herself that even though she had supported Congressman Jeffries' predecessor, Congressman Towns, who I mentioned just earlier, she understood that it was time for a change, and that this young man had something that would be an addition to the community. And it's one thing to help young people go out, get your degrees and everything, but if they've positioned themselves to earn the ability to run, then it's up to us to embrace that. And she took some slack for it because, these are people that she has known for decades, and to support him and have the foresight to support him before he was an assembly member, which would lead to him becoming a member of Congress, took a little courage.
Nah, that's major right there,
Because
because
you think about
it's gatekeepers out here. A lot of people that would block that would see that potential and really wouldn't want him to kind of get in that
The
position.
gate becomes an impediment, right?
Yeah,
It becomes a
absolutely.
hurdle. And that's sometimes often what happens, particularly in densely populated areas like New York City, where, people want to hold on to things for so long and realize that, it starts to become all about what they want out of this as opposed to what the community needs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Nah, not at all.
So yeah, growing up in Brooklyn and now kind of having a statewide role, how do you balance kind of maneuvering the local priorities still in your home community in the 57th district that you still probably have a lot of passion for, but you have to serve the entire state of New York. And a lot of people forget that's Buffalo, Albany,
All over.
Is Westchester. It's every that's a
divided
lot.
10 regions,
Yeah.
63 counties.
Yeah.
So I represent all, regardless of one's affiliation. And the one good thing is that when you have a captain, I like to call, I use sports terminology. The captain is the governor. She's our leader. She's the cap who we take our cues from. So when you have someone that you align with personally, professionally, in terms of how you look at this job of public service, it's so much easier, because they allow you to do what you believe is in the best interest of the residents you represent, regardless if they live in the North Country, Western New York, on the island, or in the city.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the affordability agenda, right now everyone's talking about affordability, but the governor was thinking about this and implementing this, years ago, and it's come to the forefront now because she did advocate for an affordability agenda in this year's budget. Now, it doesn't come at the time in which the budget is being negotiated in February and March and April. It happens, months, because you got to talk about how you want to strategize, what's the priorities, where are we identifying places that need to have tackled the issue of affordability, whether it's childcare, whether it's free universal lunch programs, increasing it to child tax credit, tripling it to $1,000. All these things, providing free education to college age students or adults who want to upgrade their skill sets to meet the demands of emerging market companies that are coming into New York. So all of this stuff, you have to, take into account the totality of what's happening in your state and meet those demands where they're going to be. Don't wait for them to get there, and then try to catch up, because then you've lost, because now you're trying to just catch up. And having a governor like that, the affordability agenda governing from the head as opposed to the tail, that's critical.
We kind of jumped a little bit. I did want to, because I see the hat you're repping. So I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit before we get more into a little bit of the policy discussions. But can you just talk a bit about your journey from undergrad, where you went to Penn State, into also as a graduate at Howard? And that's just that experience a bit. And this is, so to put it, is this the 80s, 90s?
Yeah.
80s, 90s, yeah. And also, I was curious to talk about
Yeah,
Crown Heights
brother.
in Brooklyn. Was that early 80s? What was that scene like? We got to get a little bit of the culture into this. Because we were talking about, well, yeah.
Yeah, so growing up in those areas was interesting. So I grew up on Church Avenue in the heart of Flatbush. And then my mother, we were transitioning. So I stayed with my grandmother, who still lived in Crown Heights on 591 Crown Street. And even when I would transition to Clinton Hill, I would spend most of my time with my grandparents on both sides of the family. And living in those areas, there was a mixed culture. You had the Orthodox Jewish community, which was not as big as it is now. And then you had your Orthodox Baptist community, because we had on President Street, if people who are familiar with Brooklyn, on President Street, all the church mansions for their pastors, their homes that they would provide the pastors, all were along President Street. And they're still there today. Obviously, churches have either sold them or lost them for various reasons. And so you had a mixed culture of two different communities that kind of, they lived together, but they didn't. And it was interesting because I got to see firsthand how, my very first experience of seeing how other people that don't look like me and don't live like me, how do they move on a daily basis? And likewise, I'm sure they looked at me the same way.
Yeah.
But living in those areas and living in Clinton Hill, which it wasn't the Clinton Hill that it is now, it was interesting. Seeing your mother getting robbed, seeing people, being accosted or assaulted. It stays with you.
Yeah.
I had an uncle who was shot several times, became paralyzed and blind at the same time. One of those kind of Malcolm Little type of folks, brilliant mind, mathematician, more than my mother. My mother's a master mathematician. And just to see unfortunately, how his life had to unravel and eventually, many years later, succumbing to those injuries. But dealing with that type of gun violence trauma.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see how Brooklyn and New York City has evolved to where it is today, and unfortunately how people who grew up in those neighborhoods can't afford to even live in those same neighborhoods.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that we're noticing, and that's happening across all of New York, though. Even in some part of Long Island, not as much. I think there's a lot more allure and I want to say value, but more of a density cultural experience for people that are moving into New York rather than moving to Long Island. But in the past couple of years, a lot of people from the city from COVID
I got a couple
are
of
moving
cousins
to
that
Long
live in
Island.
Long Island.
So it's a dilemma.
Without question, I grew up in Brooklyn, but now I live in Albany, a little township called Guilderland. And it wasn't because I did not want to stay in Brooklyn. It's just that my third floor walk up in a recently developed building in like the border of Clinton Hill and Bed-Stuy was I was renting out for more than what my mortgage is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And
That's
where I live now.
Yeah.
And I have land around me. I got 6 acres around me.
Yeah.
I got all the amenities that a child would want and need, and an adult would want and need.
In Albany?
Yeah.
You got that Saratoga drinking water too.
Yeah.
You got some clean water.
So and the services are great for my kids.
Yeah.
And not to say that everything is peaches and cream, but just from an affordability is just you get more bang for the buck, and that's why it's so important that we stress the governor's desire to make New York more affordable or more livable, no matter where you live, whether it's in the 5 boroughs of Long Island or upstate New York.
Yeah. How tell us a little bit real quick how that Howard experience was.
Oh, obviously, you so noted, I went to Penn State, and I went there because they offered me, a really good package financially, and I got accepted to Morehouse and everything. But I said, you know what, I'm going to do my undergrad at a historically white institution, but I wanted to make sure that I continued the legacy within my family. As I so noted, my grandmother going to Elizabeth City State in North Carolina, which they're originally from, before they fled up north. And then my mother going to Morgan State, and she could have gone anywhere. I mean, she was brilliant. She was a Ford Scholar.
Oh, wow.
And so she could have gone anywhere, but she wanted to go back south
Okay.
And lend her energies and talents to the civil rights movement back then. And then, I always wanted to go to HBCU. So going to Howard for law school was a great experience, something that I'll never, I'll always cherish friendships and professional relationships I've developed. And, my son will be going to the University of Delaware, but he wanted to go to Howard, but UD offered him a full academic ride. So I said, hey, look, go where, they're going to give you a free education. And look, if you want to continue your education, you can always, go to a Howard or a Morehouse or wherever else to continue your education. But, that HBCUs are big in our family.
I feel like recently HBCUs are kind of getting almost, depending on who you ask and the family and the cultural background, is like very similar to an Ivy League, where it's almost like if you go to Howard or Morehouse, and it's kind of like saying maybe Brown or Yale or Harvard. Again, if it's the family structure and what you're really looking to accomplish, because like even seeing the hat, I feel like that's looking at a Yale hat in a way.
Yeah.
It's.
They
I feel
position it like an Ivy
yeah,
League,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's dope.
When I went into the private sector after I left the legislature, and I would deal with a lot of finance guys, the vast majority of those guys went to Morehouse.
Yeah.
Or a vast majority of them went to Howard Business School. And to me, oftentimes we see the reverse. People go to undergrad at Morehouse or Spelman or Howard, and they go to professional school at a predominantly white institution. But I'm telling you, these institutions, I think some of your viewers, listeners might know, Howard has per capita the most incoming, traditionally, high school honor society students that come in. I mean, because they're getting kids from all over the globe. And same thing with Morehouse. I mean, there are a number of West African students that go to Morehouse than they go to any other undergrad institution. So it's really competitive to get into those schools, even now more so because of the globalization of our economy and people being able to, to move a lot freely. Yeah, free, I should say. So I'm just, just honored to be able to wear this hat and to wear these colors, understanding the tradition that's behind it and all the people that came before me.
That's beautiful, and definitely seeing that a lot more. So we're going to jump real quick into some policy questions. And again, keeping in mind the role of the Secretary of State, but also this role oversees vital programs like the Downtown Revitalization Initiative and the Brownfield Opportunities Areas. So can you just talk a little bit about how these investments actually benefit working class and underserved residents? And I know I am blessed to be on the LIREDC and co-chair of the Hempstead. We just got the $10 million award here. And so can you just give us a breakdown of how these work and how this benefits the communities that are receiving these dollars?
So to piggyback on your say, so I was just appointed by the governor to be the chair of the REDC. The REDC has issued over $10 billion in grants to thousands of communities over the years. Within the REDC is the DRI, which you mentioned, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, which again, millions of dollars, over 120 communities since 2012. And then in an effort to scale it down to smaller communities, the governor created New York Forward.
Yep, $5 million, right?
Right.
Not $5 million.
$5 million grant because these communities, and on top of that, we offer the technical assistance through our Office of Planning and Development and Community Infrastructure because a lot of these smaller townships and rural communities don't have those technical professionals to deal with the implementation of their eventual plan. But how it impacts communities that you and I come from is that it definitely, one, it shows that there are opportunities for engineers, opportunities for urban planners, opportunities for those who are interested in how communities are developed. And I'm always looking for engineers. We have a shortage of engineers. We have a shortage of planning professionals. So we're always looking to fill that gap. So that's one thing.
That's good to know. Y'all hearing this?
Yeah.
You got to put the word out for engineers.
That's one thing.
Okay.
The second thing, when it comes to DRI, New York Forward, and what you so noted, our BOA program, which deals with the remediation and curing of land that might have been contaminated over a period of time, and the land in and of itself might be contaminated, but the space it covers might be in a downtown area or might be in an area that needs to be further utilized. But those programs also allow for opportunities for developers on the private sector side to couple with the public sector money and investment that we make. Oftentimes we get, a community might get a $10 million DRI, but that DRI turns into a force multiplier by bringing on additional private sector dollars. And a lot of those private sector dollars deal with developers who want to redevelop or repurpose an old abandoned building, that might want to create affordable housing. So again, you're talking about the opportunity for lending, the opportunity to develop, the opportunity to plan. So although we're talking about a position that's in the public sector, there is a public-private partnership that's organically created by New York Forward, by Downtown Revitalization Initiative, through the Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure. So even if you're not in the public sector, there are private sector opportunities. And we understand that so long as you have the passion and the patience and the persistence, that will create a successful public-private partnership. Oftentimes we take for granted that just because you create a public-private partnership that they're just going to be successful because they are a public-private partnership. You know, you got to have those components in place. And so there are a lot of opportunities for our folks who are in the private sector who want to be a part of these opportunities. Because like I said, if they prepared themselves and they have the bonding and they have the experience, or even if they don't, there are opportunities there
to get involved.
Taking advantage of.
You know, Andrew, you served on the Amityville Village,
Yeah,
right?
DRI, Amityville Village. The what's that? The new restaurant we went into.
So
when they just
Masitos
had
is a good example. There was a abandoned bank, a vacant bank in Amityville Village.
Right.
They had gotten a $10 million DRI.
Right.
11.
11?
Yeah, they got 11.
And now it has a brand new restaurant. It's called Masitos. It's amazing. It's Mexican cuisine. They're calling it one of the most frequented restaurants on Long Island right now. So that's a great example. Also, though, in Hempstead, we got to shout out to Hempstead. Shout out to Mayor Hobbs and Deputy Mayor.
Shout out Mayor Hobbs.
I'm
Daniels.
Be seeing them later today.
Shout out to the whole team, because Hempstead has a rich history on Long Island too. A lot of history on Long Island. So this $10 million is really just a piggyback on the 30 million plus, 100 million plus investment that's already going on there.
Exactly.
And this is a great opportunity for a lot of the residents that have been living there for 50 years, 60 years. And they get to say, hey, this area, this street right here has been bothering me. I would like to put a sign here, or let's change the facade in the downtown villages. This $10 million opportunity gives them an opportunity to not only share their vision, be a part of the process, but also see it actually come to fruition.
Yes.
So it kind of gets around the politics a bit and really focuses on what the environment looks like for them.
Right. And I think the overlooked exercise that people take for granted is that the planning committees are made up of people from the community.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they're the ones who know what will work, what won't work,
and they remind you
where. Yeah, exactly. what they believe is best for the community.
Exactly.
Because what we don't want to do is govern from the top down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We understand that investments like this are only as successful as the people who live there will make it.
Yep.
And if we don't listen to them, then we're only going to fail due to our own arrogance and ignorance.
That's why I got to shout out Mayor Dennis Siri for that, man, because the DRI for Amityville Village, it was very diverse, and it was we had a real warrior on there. There was like an elderly lady from the community,
Yeah.
and she was not letting nobody off the hook.
No,
anything,
and nor should she, because
it's the time.
her experience, has value, right?
Yeah.
The years of living in that community has value that you can't really put a dollar sign on.
Right,
And that's why
right.
it's so critical. And I often tell people, look, even if you don't get your application approved, you come back to us, you say, hey, where are we lacking? And then you go back to the drawing board and, you politic it and you make sure that the community is cool with it. And then you resubmit. And oftentimes people, after they resubmit, they get the award. So really the value is priceless in terms of the exercise to understand what community leaders and those who are community leaders who are not designated as such, but are community leaders because they have that institutional knowledge of the community for the past, several decades, because they came here as young people or young families and they raised their kids. They have grandkids now and they're still living here. And oftentimes, people don't think that they know anything because we look at them as, seasoned individuals that, time has passed them by, but in reality,
A lot of wisdom.
right.
A lot of wisdom.
Exactly.
So we only got a couple minutes. I want to run through some questions for you, but a big thing for us is civic education. And it's civic power and explaining how much ability there is for citizens in a community to shift political will if they're engaged and involved and have the right education. So what does civic power mean to you in today's political and cultural landscape? Because it's all over the place. It's crazy right now on the federal level, the state level. There's a lot of different movements going on right now in New York City, which we don't got to get into.
Right.
But, civic power is all over the place. So what does that mean to you?
I'll say this, that civic power are mutually inclusive terms, right? But it's only a term that gets turned into reality if we, as older adults, allow for younger people the chance to, put their footprint on things or put their political DNA on things. And it goes back to, when I talked about my mom supporting Hakeem, Congressman Jeffries, is that she saw in him the ability to do more for his community. He was at a white shoe law firm, but he was willing to give all that up, making millions of dollars, partnership, to give back to the community. And that says a lot. So we have to be more in tune with what our young people are doing and see what's in them, even though they might not see it in themselves, and cultivate that and to embrace it and to not look at it as a threat of them trying to take something away from me personally, but what can they add to the community? And we, like when you guys are around those athletes, those student athletes, those are guys that have dedicated time and energy. They're persistent. They sacrifice so much, and that is a character that can be translated into public service.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
So to me, it's one of those things that we as adults have to be honest with ourselves and saying, you know what, I got to bring this young cat along. I got to bring this young sister along because I see something in them that will help my kids when they become adults and young adults and so forth, and they matriculate in life. So, it's one of those things that it's hard to say because, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice, and to know when to step aside.
Yeah.
But it's always easier when you are able to pour into somebody,
Absolutely.
and step aside willingly, as opposed to having someone say, look, you got to go.
Yeah.
Shout
out to your mom too. What's her name one more time?
Marilyn Mosley.
Shout out to Miss Marilyn Mosley, because in reality, is actually a kingmaker if you think about it.
Yeah,
definitely a kingmaker.
They call her Mama Mo. So, and it's interesting to see what people call your mother that.
Yeah. Well, so one last question, really. What's one bold idea right now you believe New York should embrace at this time to just make the whole state more equitable?
I think, the notion of when people say the word free, that, free and is affiliated with freedom. But sometimes, often people try to use the word free in a negative connotation, using it as a way of saying, well, this person wants to be this and give away things and everything. But now more than ever, New Yorkers across our state need to know that they have a government that supports working class men and women and families, those who want to be upwardly mobile, those who are coming into the workforce as young professionals, and understanding that we're going to give everything that we can to make your lives more livable, more manageable, and more and just easier. To be able to live in dignity, to be able to save up for a home while not having to sacrifice providing a college tuition fund for your children, being able to, change with the ebbs and flows of our economy and provide you with free educational training at the collegiate level so that, you don't become obsolete as a laborer in New York, as we invite, companies like Micron to Central New York. We're going to provide hundreds,
upstate,
thousands of jobs and other ancillary jobs that are indirectly affiliated with that revitalization effort of Central New York. That's kind of like, where I see us going. And I think the governor is doing her part. But I don't want people to get caught up in who's saying it, but what impact it's going to make on people's lives. And those impacts transcend political affiliation. They transcend where you live. They transcend, your cultural and ethnic background. But sometimes if it comes out of the mouths of someone else, they look at it as being a threat. And in reality, if you're wealthy, how is this going to impact you?
Yeah. I love that, especially in the state of New York right now. There's a lot of just political shifts and headwinds and a lot of movement. We need sound public servants. We need public servants and platforms that move with principles and integrity and in values, because it's a crucial time right now.
Yeah, all hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck. And, I was talking to a colleague of mine in the cabinet and said, look, your differences aside, this is not a time to abandon ship. This is a time to get behind our governor, to get behind working with our legislators to maximize what we can get for the people we represent. That's right now as imperative as anything. But at the same time, we know we are in the game of politics. But at the same time, we want our authenticity to be a part of our public policy. And if people see that, I think we have a leg up in terms of winning their approval, because they know that regardless of what party we come from or what part of the state we come from, what benefits, our families here in Long Island or in the city will benefit people in Buffalo, Rochester, and the North Country.
Excellent.
Well, hold on, one more, Dan. We got to shout his mother out again, because
Okay.
that's a big thing right there. Shout out to you. What's your mother name again? I'm sorry.
Marilyn Dolores Mosley.
Shout out to Miss Marilyn Dolores Nixon, because
Mosley.
Mosley. Hakeem Jeffries is a popping figure
That's
right
his
now
son.
that resonates with the culture.
No, that's why I
And
had to say that,
We
yeah.
wouldn't have known who he was if your mother would have gatekeep. So I really think that that's important, man, and we seeing that right there. So shout out to her and shout out to Hakeem Jeffries as well.
Yes,
No doubt.
sir.
That's my man.
I'm minority leader right now. Maybe that'll change.
Yeah, my man.
in the future.
You know what? I speak to him intermittently, and I say, "Look, man, you were made for this times. The times make the man. It's not the other way around." And we're blessed to have him where he is, and I think we'll be even more blessed to see him go where he needs to be in the future, not only here in New York State but throughout this country and globally.
Yeah.
So
And it's not
I've
easy.
I've known of him
Yeah.
for many years because
Yeah.
obviously I knew Dr. J.
Okay.
You know, Dr. Leonard Jeffries.
I'm about to say Dr. J. Bring the time. I thought you meant the
Dr. Leonard Jeffries, you know, who used to longtime professor at Temple, you know, African American history, African American department. But I got to meet him prior to him even becoming an assembly member. And but again, I appreciate you giving my moms a shout out because again, she didn't turn that gate into an impediment,
which is a big thing.
Just crucial.
So we appreciate your time. We didn't actually get too much into maybe in the future when we talk to you again about. We like to get into the African American studies. We've had some great conversations with other guests about that, and it seems to really be of interest to a lot of our guests and followers. But for those that are listening and following us, subscribe to @Policy and Culture and Secretary of State. Where can our listeners follow you at?
They can follow us on all social media platforms. I want to say Secretary of State Walter T. Mosley, but they can just type that in. You know, you'll see my face pop up. You know, obviously, Department of State, we have our website where you can gather further information, some of the topics we talked about in terms of trying to take advantage of some opportunities, whether you're in the public sector or in the private sector. Because I know we have so much to offer, but we've been able to take advantage of.
And those licenses are going to be big, so we'll be following. I think that's a big way that we're going to be able to help your office with our platform, because there's so many entrepreneurs and young people that are looking to get their businesses licensed, from contractors to plumbers to engineers, to really get more work involved across the region. So thank you again to our 68th New York State Secretary of State, Mr. Walter Mosley. It's been a great conversation, great education for us and for our listeners, and we're super grateful for your time and wisdom. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Blessings.